The following is a quarantine recording presented to you in around sound. It was recorded with whatever was lying around.
Lady don't take no shit, insist on respect the sister, walk around acting womanish. She won't speak unless it's something worth saying, don't play. The girl take herself so seriously, people stare curiously. She got a natural way, her hips sway furiously, yet luxuriously. Carries herself like the cutest, most prettiest thing you see this side of the bay.
Hey, this is Lady Don't Take No, your weekly roundup of all of the real and none of the fake. I'm your host, Alicia Garza. This show is pro-black, pro-queer, proudly feminist, and pro-do-what-you-like. Every week, you're going to get the best of what goes on in my head, what we're loving on and what we're hating on, what we might be and what we ain't gonna do. Politics, pop culture, our soundtrack for the week, we cover it all. We are recording from Oakland, California, the center of the known universe, where we are on Rona lockdown. It's a weird time, it's a scary time, it's all the kinds of time, but don't worry. We're going to help you pass the time every week, so be sure to tune in, tell a friend, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We do it for the culture, so the pod is free 99 because we know that stimulus check, it's gotta last.
You know I can't always fathom everything that you say about half the time. But when I hear your voice, you support your boys with all of that body language, girl, it's alright.
My guest this week is a Bay Area treasure, but his work stretches well beyond the Bay. He's a nationally recognized journalist, adjunct professor, hip-hop historian, radio programmer, producer, DJ, media and community activist, and he's also my homie, Davey D. Welcome to the pod, Davey.
I'm glad to be on, and congratulations to the pod.
Hey, thank you. We're stoked to have you on, and we have tons to talk about. You have been on my mind all week, and so we got things to do. I wanted us to start with some controversial statements that you recently made on Facebook regarding what the best pizza is. And you have stated, for the record, that Domino's pizza is somehow better than Round Table. I mean, what?
So, let's make the record clear. And, and I'm serious. I live near Domino's.
Uh-huh.
And I live near a Round Table.
Uh-huh.
Now, when you go to the Round Table, they got good pasta, but I'm not paying like $45 for a damn pizza. When I can go down to Domino's and I can get 3 medium-sized pizzas for $20.
Correct, because their pizza is nasty.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. I have kids here. The kids love the pizza. Plus, you can get their sauces. Their sauces are good. So we're talking about that at least when I go. I don't know what happens when you go. But when I go, I'm able to get, their garlic sauces. They got a pesto sauce. They got good pepperoni. You can't go wrong with pepperoni. Ain't nobody have better pepperoni than somebody else. They got the pineapple. Ain't nobody have better pineapple. And they got the sausage.
This is rough.
So what we're really talking about is getting down to the crust. Is the crust good or is the crust not good?
Yo, the Domino's crust is oily. It's not good.
The Domino's crust is made for poor folks who eat pizza on the first round and then they eat it on the second round.
But the problem is they serve it to you on the second round. That's the problem, my friend.
Well, I'm just saying, as a Domino's aficionado, I'm just that guy that's going to ride for Domino's.
I'm going to let you have that.
Plus, Domino's was real gangster back in the days. If you didn't pay your Domino's driver, the owner would show up and be like, "You're going to pay my driver." Anybody who does that in the city of Oakland and Berkeley, I'm gonna give them their respects.
They bout it.
That's some next level stuff. Like, wait, hold up. You didn't get paid? Nah, I didn't get paid. Who didn't pay you? Dude on 78th and Eads or something like that. Let me make my ride on up there. And you're going to pay the Domino driver or there's going to be a problem. That's how they got down. So I respect that. I respect they hustle.
So
I don't know about Round Table.
just like to make clear for the record that you are making an argument for how Domino's is gangster, but you ain't made the argument for how Domino's is better than Round Table. But let's move on because we got more things to discuss. So not to put numbers on this thing, but I grew up listening to you on KMEL before I actually knew you. And before we get into how we met, can we just talk about something real quick?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was prepping for this show and one memory came to my mind. And I feel like I told the story of how you and I met and totally put my whole entire foot in my mouth. And so I thought our listeners would like to know that the first time I met your beautiful partner, Erica, who's wonderful, I'm sure she thought I was on that bullshit.
Oh, really?
It's true. I mean, I was telling her how we met in Nairobi, Kenya, when I was there for the World Social Forum many years ago. I believe you were there for the same thing.
Yeah.
And I do remember that we were all hanging out in the little restaurant in the hotel, and then that closed. So you and I went back up to my hotel room, and I remember we rapped for hours, huddled around this mosquito coil because the mosquitoes were fierce.
Right.
And I remember telling your partner this, and she was like, really? In the hotel room? And I was like, no, that's not how it went. It was like, you know, we was just like talking hell late into the night. She was like, late into the night. I was like, oh no.
So let me explain that.
Please clear my name. Clear my name.
So I came to Nairobi, Kenya with a good friend of mine named Angela Salazar.
Yep.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
And Angela, so in fact, I called her mom, said I was going to Nairobi. She was like, make sure you go see my daughter.
Yeah.
And then we met and she came back and she stayed at my hotel room.
Yeah.
Now, me and Angelica are like brothers and sisters, right?
Yep.
But everybody, you know, she's very attractive. So everybody was like, hey, that you know.
Yeah, like, what you
I'm
doing?
like, well, no. I mean, I was getting props. So I was definitely like, well, you know how you do. You know, I wasn't claiming her, but if you thought it, I let it ride.
Yes.
So that was a whole other thing. So people were like, oh yeah, man, Dave came to Nairobi, you know, with his woman.
Okay.
Now, while I was there, I met Erica.
Ah, shut up. It was all the same time?
Yes, I met Erica in Nairobi on a bus with Angelica to go to a safari.
This is a mess.
So now I'm trying to detach myself, like, you know, that's like my sister over there, you know, like, oh, me and Angelica, that's my buddy, my that's my homie, you know.
Uh-huh.
And so, you know, so I can make sure that I was available to the woman who eventually became my wife.
Uh-huh.
So that's how
Yes.
that worked. And so, of course, you know, as I'm probably had to explain that Angelica is just like my little sister and not my woman, even though I was letting people think that for the first week because I was getting props. So then here you come.
Okay. This makes perfect sense.
Here you come, like, yeah, you know, me and Dave was hanging out, you know, in the room, you know, just kicking it, you know. But you know, I'm queer and I got a woman at home, or you know, trying to explain.
I was trying to get to that, and I was like, I'm just not doing myself any favors, and I'm not doing you any favors. But
So,
I
you know.
figured you probably deal with that a lot as a DJ. And so my question is like, are you like having women throw their underwear at you while you're spinning the best of hip hop? Or is that just like a myth
Never.
that we have about
Never.
DJs? I
Never.
mean, yeah, like how do you, in that dynamic, right? Because you're very public. How do you and your partner keep your partnership strong under those conditions?
Well, one, this is probably one of the few times that I publicly talk about my other half, and it's only because I know you. So,
Word,
you know,
word.
there's a public persona, there's a private, you know, life. And I think it comes to a thing of, well, we've been together like 13, 14 years now. So there's a level of trust.
Yep.
And more importantly, there's a level of respect.
Yep.
So I would not, you know, I don't disrespect my friends. So if me and you are homies and you tell me a secret, even if we become enemies, the fact is I signed a contract with you and I wouldn't I wouldn't betray you.
Legit.
You know, and that's important. And so when you have that kind of understanding, you scale it up when you're with somebody. So sure, you know, I've seen all kind of stuff at parties. I've had people, you know, come along and do the flirt thing, but we're clear, you know, it's 2020. I'm not rolling this way. And, you know, sure, you want to buy me a drink and give me a $5,000 tip, I'll take it. But
you better believe it.
oh,
Well,
that lady, that's
real.
not my wife. That's my sister. You know,
you were like, babe, shh.
let's get this money. But
I know that's right.
But on the street side, my mother half, her family or her father is a very popular singer. You know, who's performed with Selena and all that. So he's very well known. So she knows from a background. So she knows what time it is. And she's a long-time activist as well. So first she knows everybody.
Yeah.
So
you ain't getting away with nothing anyway.
Yeah. Because there'll definitely be people like, you know, I was at the club and I see your boy out there.
Well, it wasn't me because I already put my damn foot in my own mouth. So I'm just keeping it cool. And I can tell y'all have that respect because my house is still standing. So
there you go.
I really want to talk with you about your very long career in hip hop. And I'm wondering if you can just start off by telling us, do you remember how and when you first fell in love with hip hop? Like, do you remember the moment?
Yeah, there were two moments that stand out. The first time I came across it was in the late 70s. And I was on a boat called the Circle Line. And it's a boat that runs up the Hudson River in New York. And there was a song that came on called Jam on the Groove. And so I didn't know who it was, but all I know is that it had all these drum beats. And as this was happening, there was a bunch of kids on this boat. You know, there was a DJ there. And they started dancing. You know, they started getting on the ground and just doing all these crazy spin moves. That was the first time I got exposed to breaking, as they called it then. And somebody said, oh, yeah, that's hip hop. There was a guy named Arnold who lived in my neighborhood, and he was telling me about a guy named Disco King Mario. He was telling me about a cousin that used to rap over there. And that's how I got really introduced to this thing called hip hop, because he'd bring those tapes. And I fell in love with the emceeing part of it and started to become an MC. So I did my first rhymes in 78.
Hey.
You know, rapping over Cheryl Lynn's To Be Real.
Oh, that's my jam.
Yeah. And became a part of two crews. One was called TDK, which is the Total Deaf Crew out of Co-op City, Section 2.
Represent.
And then there was the other one was called the Avengers, which is in the Marble Hill section of the Bronx. And more specifically, if anybody's listening to Bronx, and they're like, in the Marble Hill, no, in the Promenade. So there's the Promenade. And folks who, if they're in New York and they remember this and they're old enough to remember, when you went from the Promenade to Marble Hill, you were still dealing with racial hostility in the Bronx, and there were the Irish cats that would be on the roofs of those row houses, and they would shoot people with pellet guns. Yeah, so that was kind of like, you know, a little thing that you had to deal with, and those were the two crews, and that's how I got my start.
That's lit. And how did you go from being an MC to becoming one of hip-hop's most influential journalists?
So I moved out here to Cali, went to school, and gave up MCing and got more into DJing. And as a DJ, there was a show here that myself, Ricky Vincent, who does the history of funk, CJ Flash, who you may know from the Rick and Rush show, bunch of us all came up under a guy named Natty Prep, the late Natty Prep. He went to Cal Berkeley, and he had a Sunday morning show that became like a centerpiece for many people in the East Bay. Like, it was politics and culture and all that. On that show, CJ Flash was doing DJing. He would have some of us come in, but I eventually took over that Sunday morning show. And with that, I started to try to figure out how can you promote your show. So instead of doing just flyers, started to do a thing where it was, well, let me just write about what we're playing on that show and let me start putting a playlist out. So we had what was called the Davey D Beat Report. The first one came out in June of 87. And it continued for a number of years. And then I linked up with a number of folks from different college radio shows. And we put together the Bay Area Beat Report, formed the Bay Area Hip Hop Coalition. But the writing that I was doing in those reports, these little newsletters, was the calling card. That's how I met everybody, because I would mail off the playlists and the beat reports to whoever's address I saw on the back of an album. And one of the people that I mailed it off to was a guy by the name of Carlton Ridenhour, who we now know as Chuck D, who called me up, and that's how I became friends with him and was encouraged to do this even more. And so the writing opened doors. It led to me doing a column for BAM Magazine. It led to me getting on the air at KPFA, where I'm still at.
Hard Knock Radio.
Well, and then it was called the Tuesday Afternoon. I was doing Tuesday afternoons, and then later the Friday Night Vibe. But it did get me my job at KMEL. A guy named Alex Mejia was one of the people to get the newsletters and used to listen to the show. So the newsletter had information about what I was playing. It also had the times that the shows were on.
Right.
So he tuned in after getting one, and that opened the doors. The other thing that I did, I had this thing called the sphere of influence. So let's say I'm trying to get a hold of you, and you're too busy and everybody's trying to holler at you. I would figure out who was around you and send them the playlist. So what I did at KMEL was, there was a guy named Keith Nafley who headed it. He's a program director. So I said, let me send a playlist to every single DJ and the secretary and the janitor. And I would strategically mention things that they did. So somebody would walk in his office and go, hey, man, somebody just wrote about you all up in this newsletter. And he'd be like, oh, let me see it. So he'd get this newsletter. Then somebody else would come in. Hey, I just saw your name mentioned in this newsletter. So it seemed like everywhere you went, somebody was telling him about the newsletter. Then I would send him a personal copy of the newsletter that came in a black envelope with gold writing.
Nice.
So that led to him tuning into my show, and that opened the doors for me to get my start at KMEL.
Nice. It sounds like, there was real power at that time in hip hop. And hip hop was not just a genre of music, but incredibly influential in our community, whether it be around politics, whether it be around other types of social issues. And of course, everything changes over time, but I'm curious just to hear your perspective here about what is the power of hip hop? What has it been? And what do you think it is now?
So there are three trains of thought. Let's start quickly with the first one, which is in the pioneering days. Hip hop is immediate and directly influenced by the politics of the Panthers, Young Lords, Nation of Islam, Five Percenters, right? Those were the elders that would talk to younger people who were trying to figure it out. Those groups, in particular the Panthers and Young Lords, were under attack by the government. So you didn't really have direct mentorship, but you had the remnants of what they stood for. So there was a certain militancy that got adopted by initially the gangs, and then later some of the older folks in hip hop. And that was applied to the racial hostility that we were facing living in the Bronx. So I told you a little bit about that, right?
Yep.
So that's one train. That train leads all the way up into the mid 80s. And there's a word that I like to use called intentionality. What I mean by that is that there's things that happen organically, and then there's things that happen because people are like, we're going to make some stuff happen. And so there's a nightclub called the Latin Quarter. And the Latin Quarter is like the go-to place. It's a rough and rugged thing. It's in Midtown Manhattan. It's the place where everybody goes. People from out of town that wanted to try and make it in New York go to the Latin Quarter. Most of them got booed. Public Enemy got booed. There's a gentleman here from Oakland who got booed. His name is MC Hammer. He returned with a song called Turn His Mother Out. That's why he says, they say you're not hitting in New York, Hammer. And he does Turn His Mother Out. That was a response to him getting booed at the Latin Quarter, right? So there's a guy named Paradise Gray. There's a gentleman by the name of Sonny Carson who is a well-known activist. There's a movie about him called The Education of Sonny Carson and his son, Lumumba Carson. And they decide that they're going to start having these gatherings at the Latin Quarter called the Meeting of the Minds. And what took place at this Meeting of the Minds was they were going to bring in the hottest artists who were around at that time. So it might have been KRS-One, it would have been Queen Latifah, it would have been the Jungle Brothers, it would have been a bunch of people along with community elders. So during these meetings of the minds, they're addressing several things. One of them was the crack epidemic, which was raging. The second thing was black on black crime. And then the third thing was apartheid. And during that time, you saw a number of issues get addressed in songs. So there was an agreement with many of the artists that when they did videos, that they would put montages of leaders that people should know. So KRS-One, you see it in My Philosophy. Queen Latifah, you see it in hers, Ladies First. And what was basically being emphasized in the Meeting of the Minds was hip-hop's fifth element, which is called knowledge. So this emphasis on knowledge starts to escalate. So the Meeting of the Minds goes, look, everybody's wearing gold chains. And gold chains is causing a lot of people to lose their lives because people are stealing them. They're cutting you with razor blades. So Paradise was like, anybody who goes on stage got to take off the chain, and we're going to start having you wear leather medallions with Africa around it.
Correct.
So that's how that kicks off. And eventually, it leads to the formation of the group that we now know as the Native Tongues, Jungle Brothers, Tribe Called Quest, and all that. So there's a little documentary on that on Netflix, and there's also a book that's written that kind of chronicles for people who want receipts on that, right? So that's one train that happens out of that. The second train of it is that this intentionality leads into what we now know as hip-hop's golden era, which means that the most popular artists were the ones that were kicking knowledge. So that's Public Enemy, X-Clan. So that seeps down to people all around the country who figure out, well, the way that you do hip-hop is to kick this knowledge. So hip-hop became a thing of where when you got on the mic, you needed to be saying something. To answer your question about the power it has, the emphasis on the MC speaking about issues that were ignored in the Black community gave them extra weight because they were the only ones with microphones. So if Chuck D said, fight the power, you had nobody else saying fight the power, so you paid your attention to what he was saying because it was on the record. It was the only way we could get our voice across. So hip-hop became powerful in that regard. And these people, you know, they were being told and taught by people like Kwame Ture and others. They were part of organizations. So X-Clan was with Black Watch, Public Enemies with the Nation of Islam. And so within those organizations, you started to see activities that they were all doing. That's a particular thing that makes hip hop very powerful. And then you had DJs like myself and others that were, you know, being mentored by folks who came out of a Black consciousness movement that basically say, hey, man, if you get on these airwaves, it ain't about you shucking and jiving. You got to say something. So there were people that you were accountable to that you were coming up under. Almost every group from Too Short on down to Digital Underground, you name it, everybody had some sort of conscious record. So let's fast forward up to Black Lives Matter.
I know something about that.
Right. You know, you have between the golden era, you start to have hip hop activism. And in particular, the Bay Area is a jumping off point. But New York is doing similar things too in other places. But the Bay Area with Van Jones and Tony Coleman and Third Eye Movement and your partner and others were all part of an era that was using culture as a way to communicate social issues, right? So that's an important aspect. But what it's leading to is by the time Black Lives Matter hits the scene, you don't necessarily need Jay-Z to tell you to fight the power. Why? Because Alicia Garza has 1 million people on her Twitter account too. You feel what I'm saying?
I do.
So the one mic was now many mics and many activists who no longer had to depend upon hip hop to be its media outlet, but now you could do it yourself through social media. And then it was enhanced because it was organizing and there was strategies. And at this point, you start to get 15 and 20 years of activism that allow you to build in ways that hip hop was kind of limited because, first of all, radio was like, we're not playing all this fight the power stuff no more.
They're like, you got me messed up.
Yeah, we're not trying to do that no more. So basically, hip hop passed the mic to activists. And we're at a standstill now to see where activists will go, and that's going to be borne out with this pandemic.
I'm really glad you said that.
Yeah, have activists stepped up or have activists fallen into a parallel trap that we often accused hip hop of doing, which is like, I'm just doing my thing. I'm performing, I'm doing shows, I might say it's something here and there. And now you can also look at a lot of quote unquote activists who's like, I'm looking for my speaking gigs. And we're seeing that flesh out because there's a bunch of people that's like, I don't know what I'm going to do because I don't have no speaking gigs. And you're seeing other activists who are actually organizing in the middle of this pandemic and shining and doing things. And you're looking and going, okay, that's our leader. That's a leader. That's a leader. I don't know about these other folks, but did we pay them $15,000 to speak at our school?
Yeah.
But I think now you're going to see a real big emphasis on class and privilege and what that really means, because that's showing up in ways that are like, wow. So I think you're going to start to see a different type of understanding of how we engage one another, because there's going to be some clear divides of have and have-nots.
So let's talk Joe Biden, though, and I want to talk about this Black agenda.
Okay.
I mean, real talk, without Black people, Joe Biden would not be the nominee right now. Real talk, without Black people, Joe Biden would not have even made it through South Carolina. He would have gone the way of, Julian Castro, if we're to keep it real. Joe Biden has run for president. This is his third time. And it was looking like he was not going to make it again. His campaign was essentially dead on arrival. And then South Carolina primary, he gets the support of Clyburn, and here we are. 5 months down the road through these primaries, we get a lift every voice agenda. And right. I'm just curious, have you read it? What do you think about it?
Well, first of all, he shouldn't have had to do that. He should have just went to Movement for Black Lives, yourselves, and a whole bunch of other people who had agendas and brought y'all into a room.
Correct.
And he didn't do that.
Nope.
And what I think is happening, they're going, hey, Joe, the reason why you won some of these primaries, yeah, it was black folks. Black folks in states that are never going to turn blue. So it's good that you won the primary. But let's look in places like Illinois and Minnesota and Michigan and some of these other places. You know why you winning, Joe? Because some white folks in these suburbs also came out in large numbers. And they have to weigh who they're going to appeal to at the end of the day. Are you going to appeal to the black folks who came out in numbers, some of them because of Clyburn, some of them because Bernie dropped the ball in terms of engaging them? He had a chance to engage them and didn't. Yeah. And I was a Bernie supporter, so he missed the boat. And so Biden becomes like, we need to get Trump out of office. Who's our best chance? We'll go with Joe, for whatever reasons. And they're going, Joe, if you start leaning too much with these black folks, you may lose these important, soccer mom, suburban votes. So I think that's the dilemma. So, black folks are like, okay, we gave you, we put you into office. And it's like, are you going to pick Stacey Abrams? You're going to pick Kamala? Who are you going to pick? And I think the reality is like, the reason why we have Trump in office now is because we lost in Ohio, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, North Carolina, and Florida. And we only needed 4 of the 6 to win. So now what you have to debate is, Can I take black people for granted and go with Amy Klobuchar, who might be able to appeal to those Rust Belt voters who oftentimes are very, racially hostile towards us? And they're looking like, can we get her crowd? And by the way, that was the crowd that Hillary tried to get, and she got her ass handed to her. She tried to get them in Pennsylvania.
Well, correct. Check this out. 25% of black men who are polled right now about voting are saying that they're going to vote for Trump. I'm not understanding why there is this analysis that black folks are in the bag, especially when we have this counter conversation about how black folks aren't showing up. I mean, I just feel like we got to have a real conversation here. And frankly, 5 months later to put out a black agenda when all of the other candidates, Michael Bloomberg, Pete Buttigieg, Tom Steyer, they all have already had black agendas out in this piece. I just feel like we are headed towards disaster. We have not proven this theory that the party continues to have, that these voters who voted for Obama in 2012 are reconvertible. We have not actually tested or seen any adjustment to that strategy. What we do know is that, black folks, when energized and when engaged, it's never less than 80% of black voters voting for a Democratic nominee. And I believe that's true since 1965. There was a shift there from, black folks largely voting Republican to starting to vote Democrat. But I worry that actually this might be the year that we see a shift in voting patterns. And I'm not understanding, for a team that wants to win and a team that needs to win, why there is no engagement that is really doubling down on black communities, as opposed to being like, well, we already got y'all. And we're going to go try to convert these other folks who we know we don't got. And actually, it's kind of a crapshoot.
Well, here's what I tell people all the time. And I said this in 2016 when I got back from Ohio. I was asked at Allen Temple, where I go to church, how was the convention? And I said, Trump's going to win. And here's why. I wasn't saying it like I'm some sort of, political guru and all that. But I said, I'm out in East Cleveland and I'm seeing no signs for Hillary. Mm-hmm. And that's the black part. That's like going to East Oakland and not seeing things. And I said, and I'm seeing that there is not this energy. And so I said, if you want Hillary to win, you got to do more than vote. You're going to have to put in some work.
Yep.
Because she's not putting in the work that you need to have happen. And I've said this recently. I can pull up those receipts in the column itself. Joe Biden is not trying to win.
Listen, could you put this on a T-shirt for me?
Right. He's not trying to win, right?
I feel like this is the 2020 version of George Bush don't care about black people.
Well, I don't know what the agenda is, right? I don't know. I don't know what it is. But if you want to get rid of this guy, the orange guy, you who live in New York, which gave Hillary a 2 million vote margin, we who live in California, that gave her a 4.5 million vote margin. That's how she got her plurality, by the way. People's like, she got the popular vote. Yes, because Cali won by 4.5 million votes. But it's in those Midwest states where it becomes close, where there's racial animosity and all these things, and that's what everybody's looking at. I don't anticipate a blue state turning red, and I don't anticipate a red state turning blue unless you're putting in the groundwork. And so how you're going to win those Midwest voters is going to be contingent upon folks who actually have a degree of resources and privilege to go and make that appeal, because Biden ain't going to make it. And the only wild card, and I'll close with this, might be that vast amount of money that Bloomberg has, is he going to spend it on behalf of Biden? And if he does, he's going to be the president. It's just going to be Joe Biden's going to be the mouthpiece.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I wonder if we also just need to consider this possibility, which is to win those Midwestern voters. Maybe the party is making a calculation that it needs to throw Black people under the bus. Well, who knows?
That's exactly what I'm saying. If you do that, if you do that and saying, I don't really need them, I got it. Amy, you come on, be on the ticket, and you excite those white
That's
voters
a done
in
deal.
the Midwest.
We'll have Trump for another 20 years if we do that.
Well, they're counting on Black folks saying, I'm going to soak it up. I'm going to vote for them anyway.
I think that's going to be a hard road to sell. Just like that, it is time for our weekly roundup of all the things that Lady just ain't gonna do this week. Number 1, reopen states before we're ready to, giving in to the temper tantrums of those who prefer a free market over their own lives and over your life. Wow, my people. I would ask if it's really come to this, but I already know the answer to that question. I'm told that what comes along with this reopening are provisions that if you were previously receiving unemployment, you're now being encouraged to come up off that thing because, of course, if everything is open, why would you need to file an unemployment claim? Maybe because it's not safe to be serving people who are spraying little Rona droplets all over you and everybody else. Unless, of course, this reopening comes with a commitment to protecting people, like with masks and gloves and healthcare and all that stuff. But any other scenario than that, Lady would say this is 100% on that bullshit. So that's one thing Lady ain't gonna do this week, is act like reopening states is saving the economy. We are literally killing people. Let's go to number 2. Other thing Lady don't take this week is anybody who is running around talking about masks are a hoax, just like the Rona. Listen, y'all can fuck around and find out if you want to, but trust me when I say not one of your freedoms are being infringed upon by asking you to protect me from your Rona spray. I would love to see this 5G energy directed towards the real freedoms that are being infringed upon. Let's start with your right to vote. But y'all don't hear me though. All right, last thing Lady ain't gonna take this week is election seasons without a robust, responsive Black agenda. So we all know Joe Biden released his Black agenda this week, and, well, girl, I guess. I mean, you're gonna hear more from me on this in the next coming pods, but suffice it to say, I think Democrats need to win this election. I think Democrats need Black voters to help them win this election. And if this is what we're working with, folks, I'm pretty sure Democrats are going to lose this election. Lady don't take no agenda for Black people that doesn't change the rules that are rigged against us. That's it. That's all, as my mama used to say. Go on our socials, check it out, and tell me, are y'all good with this or nah? Now, here's what we want more of this week, though. Lady loves Insecure. There is so much for us to talk about this week. There's just so much to discuss that I feel like I need an Insecure support group. But suffice it to say, who y'all got, Issa or Molly? Talk back on our socials at Lady Don't Take No Podcast. Number 2, Lady loves making a way out of no way. Look, it is clear at this point that the government ain't got us. Certain legislators right now are asleep at the wheel because, frankly, they don't rock with government anyway. They're just happy to get paid by it. In the meantime, so many people are stepping up to organize and fill the gap. This week, I want to give a shout out to Project Okra, which is providing free and culturally appropriate food to trans folks who are food insecure right now. For more on how to support them and a whole slew of other mutual aid projects, check out our socials and spread the word. And then finally, Lady loves Don Out of Fuck Since 2016 Lemon, who made our list this week. He basically hit Trump with Mariah Carey's "Why You So Obsessed With Me?" But instead of being obsessed with me, it was all about why y'all are so obsessed with Obama. Don Lemon bodied Donald Trump in just under 20 seconds and sent me all the way to heaven when he said, Is it because you got punked on that whole birth certificate thing? Lord, somebody send Don Lemon a drink. He might be parched after that last shred of a fuck just flew out the window. And with that, we have reached the end of our show. But I will be back here every single Friday morning to accompany you where you used to have a commute. Thank you so much, Dave, for joining us. And please tell us where the good people can connect with you on the socials.
Yeah, you can reach me on hiphopandpolitics.com. You can hit us on Mr. Davey D. That is my handle on Facebook. And also, I got a big old petition that myself and a bunch of other people have put out because DJs are being, ran over by Facebook and Instagram. We got about 10,000 people. So look up Let the DJs Play, and you'll see and sign that petition because we intend to deliver it to Zuckerberg and his other folks. And that's about it. So thank you for having me.
Excellent. We'll lift it up on our socials too. So check it out if you want to find out how you can support DJs or how you can find Dave. And that's all for Lady Don't Take No. We appreciate you joining us, and we hope to see you back next week. Please connect with us and tell us what's on your mind, what you like, and what you just ain't gonna do no more. On Twitter, we're at Lady Take. On Insta, we're at Lady Don't Take No Pod, and we're also on Facebook. Find our page, Lady Don't Take No Pod. We post ways to do something about things that you hear on this show on our social media. So if we got you amped up today, check out the socials to find out how you can take action. Please subscribe and write us a review and let the people know what you've heard here today. Our producer is Phil Circus. Our incredible theme is by Latyrix, and this pod is supported by the Black Futures Lab. I'm your host, Alicia Garza. Remember, candidates need to earn our votes. Not all protests are created equal. Don Lemon is out of fucks, and hip-hop can still give us that work. That's right, I said it, because Lady Don't Take No.
Lady don't take no shit, insist on respect the sister, walk around like a womanish. She won't speak, less it's something worse, saying don't play. The girl take herself so seriously, people stare curiously. She got a natural way, her hips sway furiously, yeah, the luxurious.
Love y'all.